All right, guys, let's talk about one of the most frustrating things I hear over and over again. People are trying intermittent fasting. They're skipping meals, they're tightening up their eating windows, but the fat just doesn't seem to budge. They're confused, they're frustrated, and they start questioning whether fasting even works in the first place. Now, here's the reality. Fasting can absolutely be a powerful tool. I've seen it work time and time again, but if you're not losing weight, if your belly fat isn't moving, it's not because fasting is broken. It's because there's a mistake in the way you're applying it. When I work with patients, I see the same patterns over and over. People are fasting, but then eating the wrong foods. When they break the fast, they're still loading up on things that spike insulin, drive hunger, and shut down fat loss. Others are locking themselves into a fasting schedule that simply doesn't match their physiology, so they end up overeating later in the day. And then there are those who don't understand how critical food quality is. They think they can fast and then eat whatever they want, but the body doesn't work that way. The bottom line here is that fasting isn't a magic bullet. It's a tool, and like any tool, it only works if you use it correctly. The good news is once you correct the common mistakes, fasting can become incredibly effective. In fact, when paired with the right nutrition strategy, it's one of the most consistent methods I've seen for fat loss, particularly around stubborn belly fat. Today, I want to walk you through the top reasons why fasting fails, and then I'll show you the number one fat loss approach that takes fasting from frustrating to effective. A lot of people approach intermittent fasting with the mindset that simply skipping breakfast or eating in a smaller window is automatically going to melt the fat away. And while fasting does change the way your body handles energy, it doesn't override the fundamentals of nutrition and metabolism. One of the biggest misconceptions out there is that fasting is some kind of magic switch where calories no longer matter, food choices no longer matter, and your metabolism somehow ignores what you put in your body as long as you're not eating all the time. But that's not how the human body works. When you look at patients who struggle with weight loss despite fasting, there's almost always a common pattern. They're relying solely on the fasting schedule to do the heavy lifting while ignoring the quality of what they eat when they finally sit down for that meal. If the food you're breaking your fast with is still processed, high carb, loaded with vegetable oils, or nutrient poor, your body is going to respond the same way it always does, spiking insulin, storing energy, and slowing fat release. That means fat loss stalls, even if you're eating in a 4-hour window. It's important to understand that fasting is not erasing the impact of food quality. Nutrient balance still matters. If someone fasts for 20 hours and then eats 2 giant meals of fast food, they might be eating fewer times, but they're still driving the same metabolic dysfunction that caused the weight gain in the first place. Your hormones, particularly insulin and leptin, are highly sensitive to what kind of food you consume. A small portion of lean meat with some fat is going to signal your body completely differently than a slice of pizza or a bowl of pasta. Even if the calories look the same on paper, another part of this is metabolism. Your body is not a simple math equation. Yes, energy balance is part of it, but metabolism adapts. If you fast and then over-restrict calories while still eating poor quality food, your body may down-regulate thyroid function, slow down non-exercise activity, and hang on to fat more aggressively. That's why so many people say they're fasting, eating less, and yet feel stuck at the same weight for weeks. They've put themselves in a metabolic state where fat loss is harder, not easier. On the other hand, if you pair fasting with quality, nutrient-dense food, you're giving your body what it actually needs to thrive. Protein becomes the cornerstone here. When you break your fast with a steak, eggs, or fish, you're telling your body to preserve lean mass, build muscle, and keep metabolism elevated. Fat alongside that protein provides satiety and stable energy while avoiding the blood sugar roller coaster that processed carbs bring. This combination makes fasting feel sustainable and effective because now the eating window is aligned with foods that work with your physiology, rather than against it. People often underestimate how much the micronutrients play into this as well. Fasting on junk food leaves you depleted, craving, and more likely to binge later. Fasting on nutrient-rich animal products leaves you nourished, satisfied, and less likely to overeat. The difference between those two experiences is massive, and it explains why some people thrive on intermittent fasting while others crash and burn. The reality is, fasting alone is not a guarantee for fat loss. It's a framework that can amplify good nutrition or magnify bad nutrition. If you go into it thinking the timing is all that matters, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But if you respect that food quality, nutrient balance, and metabolic health are the foundation, then fasting becomes a multiplier. It makes fat loss more efficient, it improves hunger control, and it accelerates results. That's the distinction between the people who use fasting and succeed and the ones who use fasting and stay stuck. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they try intermittent fasting is what they choose to eat the moment they finally break that fast. They've gone 16, 18, sometimes 20 hours without food, and then they sit down to a plate of refined carbs, processed foods, or something cooked in industrial seed oils. And what happens next is predictable blood sugar spikes, insulin shoots up, cravings come roaring back, and before they know it, they're overeating well beyond their hunger cues. The whole effort of fasting, the discipline, the waiting, the restraint gets undermined in a matter of minutes because the food choice sends the body into fat storing mode. When you break a fast with carbohydrates, especially refined ones, your body is in a heightened state of sensitivity. Insulin is already primed to respond strongly, and dumping in sugar or processed starches is like throwing gasoline on a fire. You get an immediate energy rush followed by that inevitable crash. The crash is what drives hunger and cravings, making you feel like you need another snack or another meal not long after eating. Even if you tell yourself you're going to eat one meal a day, the wrong food can derail that quickly because the hormonal response makes you want more regardless of willpower. Processed foods take it a step further. They don't just cause insulin spikes, they also contain additives and flavor enhancers that override your natural satiety signals. Your brain gets tricked into thinking you haven't had enough, even if you've eaten well past your energy requirements. This is why someone can fast all day and then plow through a pizza or a bag of chips without feeling satisfied. The food is engineered to keep you eating. Combine that with the insulin effect and fat loss gets pushed further out of reach. Seed oils add another layer of damage. These industrial fats are highly inflammatory, unstable when heated, and disruptive to cellular function. When you break your fast with foods fried in canola, soybean, or sunflower oil, you're flooding your system with compounds that increase oxidative stress and interfere with the way your body processes energy. Inflammation itself makes fat loss harder because it interferes with insulin signaling. So now you've got a double whammy: insulin driving fat storage and inflammation, making it harder for your body to burn fat efficiently. Contrast that with breaking a fast on nutrient-dense, animal-based meals. Let's say you finish your fasting window with a ribeye steak, a few eggs, or some salmon. Instead of spiking insulin through the roof, you get a stable release of nutrients. Protein signals your body to protect lean mass and stimulate satiety hormones like peptide YY and GLP-1, which tell your brain you've had enough food. Fat provides long, steady energy and makes the meal satisfying without the crash. And because these foods are nutrient rich, your body isn't left craving something else to fill the gaps. You eat, you feel full, you stay satisfied for hours, and you don't spiral into overeating. This is why so many people notice a difference when they move from breaking their fast with something like oatmeal or toast to breaking it with steak and eggs. The first option leaves them hungry 2 hours later. The second option keeps them satiated the rest of the day. It's not about willpower, it's about physiology. The body is wired to respond differently to different foods, and fasting only magnifies that response because of the heightened sensitivity that comes after not eating. If you want fasting to work, you can't just focus on the clock. You have to focus on what's at the end of that clock. The wrong food choice makes fasting miserable and ineffective. The right food choice makes fasting powerful, sustainable, and enjoyable. It's the difference between constantly battling cravings and effortlessly coasting through the day with steady energy. When you consistently break your fast with nutrient-dense, animal-based meals, you're not just extending the benefits of fasting, you're amplifying them. One of the areas where people go wrong with intermittent fasting isn't just about what they eat, but when they choose to eat it. The fasting window itself can make or break the success of the entire approach. Too often, people hear about someone doing one meal a day or an extended 24-hour fast and assume that's the model they have to follow. They push themselves into a schedule that doesn't match their physiology, their energy needs, or their lifestyle. And what happens? They either end up overeating during their eating window, or their energy crashes so hard that the whole process becomes unsustainable. Fasting then feels like a punishment instead of a tool. When the window is too short, say eating only one meal a day, many people simply can't get enough protein or nutrients in that short period. They break their fast, they eat as much as they can, but because the meal is condensed, it's often heavy, rushed, and imbalanced. Instead of feeling satisfied, they either feel stuffed and sluggish right after eating or find themselves hungry again just a few hours later. And if that happens repeatedly, the body starts to adapt by slowing down metabolism. Over time, this kind of aggressive fasting window can actually backfire, leaving you with stalled fat loss, reduced energy, and in some cases, muscle loss because protein intake is consistently inadequate. On the other hand, when the fasting window is too long in the opposite direction, where the eating period stretches out too much, maybe 10 or 12 hours, the benefits of fasting are diluted. You're essentially grazing throughout the day again, and insulin never has a chance to stay low for long enough to unlock consistent fat burning. This is the trap many fall into when they claim they're fasting, but still snacking or drinking caloric beverages during their window. They're not giving the body enough time to shift into a true fat burning state, and so they miss the point of fasting altogether. The key is to find that middle ground where the fasting window is long enough to let insulin come down and fat burning switch on, but short enough that you can still get in two solid nutrient-dense meals without feeling deprived. For most people, this ends up being somewhere in the range of 16-9-8 or 18-6. That means fasting for 16 to 18 hours and then eating in a 6 to 8 hour window. This structure gives enough room for two meals centered around protein and fat, which allows you to hit nutritional needs, maintain muscle, and avoid feeling like you're constantly underfed. Timing also plays a role here. For example, many find better results eating earlier in the day when insulin sensitivity is naturally higher. An eating window from, say, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. often feels better than one that pushes all the way to 8 or 9 at night. Late night eating tends to interfere with digestion, disrupt sleep, and increase the chance of storing energy rather than burning it. So even within the same fasting structure, shifting the timing a few hours can dramatically change how sustainable and effective it feels. It's also worth pointing out that flexibility matters. There's no single window that works for everyone, but the mistake is assuming that more extreme fasting automatically means better results. In reality, the sweet spot for most people is a window that balances effectiveness with sustainability. The right window leaves you energized, steady, and capable of eating enough high-quality food to support your health while still tapping into fat stores during the fasting period. The wrong window leaves you drained, undernourished, and constantly fighting hunger or cravings. When fasting is structured correctly, the eating window becomes a supportive tool, not a stressor. You should feel good during the fast and satisfied during the eating period. If you're constantly feeling run down, binging when you break the fast, or unable to recover from workouts, that's a sign the window isn't working for you. Adjusting it to a more balanced range often restores progress and makes fasting feel sustainable long term. Fat loss should feel like a process you can repeat day after day, not a punishment that wears you down. Choosing the right window is what ensures that consistency. One of the most overlooked reasons why people hit a fat loss plateau, even when their fasting comes down to insulin. Fasting is supposed to lower insulin, right? It's supposed to give your body a break from constantly being in storage mode and allow fat to be mobilized for energy. But here's the issue. If you're already insulin resistant, simply compressing your eating into a smaller window doesn't automatically restore insulin sensitivity. The body can remain stuck in a state where fat cells are reluctant to release energy, hunger hormones are dysregulated, and weight loss stalls despite the hours spent fasting. Insulin resistance is essentially when your cells stop responding properly to insulin signal. Normally, insulin helps shuttle glucose into the cells and regulates fat storage. But when the system is overloaded with processed carbs, sugars, and inflammatory fats for years, those signals get blunted. Your body ends up producing more and more insulin to get the same effect, and eventually you're running around with chronically elevated insulin levels. In that environment, fasting may lower insulin temporarily, but as soon as you eat the wrong foods, insulin spikes right back up and the fat burning window is slammed shut. This is why so many people say, I'm fasting, but I still can't lose the belly fat. The issue isn't the fasting schedule, it's that the meals they are eating continue to reinforce insulin resistance. Breaking a fast with bread, pasta, sugary drinks, or even so-called healthy foods like oatmeal keeps the insulin response exaggerated. The body never has a chance to fully recover its sensitivity, so fat stays locked away. It's like having the key to the fat burning door, but jamming it every time you put it in the lock. Solution isn't just to fast harder or extend the fasting window longer. That usually backfires because it stresses the body without fixing the root problem. The solution is to address insulin resistance directly by choosing foods that stabilize blood sugar, lower inflammation, and signal the body to rely more on fat for fuels. Where nutrient-dense animal-based meals come in, when you eat a steak, eggs, or fatty fish, the insulin response is minimal compared to the same calorie load from carbs. Protein and fat promote satiety without causing the roller coaster spikes and crashes that drive hunger. Over time, consistently lowering the demand for insulin allows the body to reset its sensitivity. Another key point here is that insulin management isn't just about the macros. It's about eliminating the constant hidden sources of insulin stimulation. Snacks between meals, sweetened coffee drinks, ultra-processed foods, and seed oils all play a role. Every time you nudge insulin upward, you're delaying fat burning. Fasting is meant to give you a break from that, but if your eating window is filled with these triggers, it cancels out the benefit. This is why two people can follow the same fasting schedule and get completely different results. One is fueling with nutrient-rich foods that restore insulin sensitivity. The other is fueling with foods that keep the system broken. The good news is that insulin resistance is reversible. Studies and real-world cases show that with the right dietary changes, insulin sensitivity can improve dramatically in just weeks. The process looks like this: consistently fasting in a balanced window, prioritizing protein and fat, cutting out refined carbs and seed oils, and giving the body time to adapt. As insulin sensitivity improves, fat loss picks up again, energy stabilizes, hunger becomes more predictable, and those stubborn areas of fat finally start to shrink. What's powerful about this approach is that it doesn't rely on starvation or punishment. You're not forcing the body into submission. You're restoring function. Once insulin sensitivity is restored, fasting becomes what it's supposed to be, a natural fat burning accelerator. Instead of fighting against resistance, you're working with a body that now responds the way it's designed to. That's the difference between stalling out indefinitely and finally breaking through the plateau. I've seen this play out with countless patients over the years, and it's one of the clearest reminders that fasting by itself isn't the magic bullet. People come in frustrated because they've been fasting diligently, 16 hours, 18 hours, even one meal a day, and yet the fat around their midsection won't budge. They're tired, they're hungry, and they feel like they're doing everything right, but getting nothing in return. When we start digging into the details, the picture becomes obvious. It's not the fasting that's broken, it's the way fasting is being applied. Once we adjust food quality, eating windows, and the way insulin is managed, the results are often dramatic. I had a patient who came to me doing a strict one meal a day approach. He was proud of the discipline, but his results had completely stalled. Every evening he'd sit down to a massive plate of food, and while he was technically fasting the rest of the day, that meal was loaded with refined carbs, bread, and even desserts because he felt he had earned it. Not only was his weight stuck, but his energy was all over the place. Once we shifted his approach to 2 solid meals built around steak and eggs, the difference was night and day. His insulin spikes dropped, his energy stabilized, and within a few weeks, the belly fat started coming off steadily. Another example was a woman who had been doing 16-8 fasting religiously. She was consistent, but her meals were mostly plant-based, low in protein and high in grains. She was constantly hungry, and every evening her cravings got the best of her. She wasn't overeating calories by much, but the insulin response from the carbs was keeping her fat locked in storage. When we adjusted her meals toward higher protein, nutrient-dense animal foods, and cut the seed oils she had been cooking with, her satiety completely changed. Within 2 months, she not only lost 10 pounds of stubborn fat, but also reported that her cravings disappeared, and she had more energy during her fasting hours than she ever thought possible. Then there was a middle-aged man with type 2 diabetes who thought fasting alone would solve his metabolic issues. He was doing long fasts, sometimes 24 to 36 hours, but when he broke those fasts, it was with restaurant food heavy in oils and processed carbs. His blood sugar readings stayed high and his weight wouldn't move. Once we focused on nutrient-dense animal-based meals, meat, eggs, fish, his insulin sensitivity started to return. His fasting blood sugars dropped. His energy during workouts improved, and the weight started coming off without him feeling deprived. He eventually transitioned to a simple 18-6 schedule with 2 meals a day, and that consistency was what finally moved him past the plateau. What all of these cases show is that fasting works best when it's combined with the right inputs. The schedule alone is not enough. When patients continue eating the same foods that caused their metabolic problems in the first place, fasting only takes them so far. But when they adjust the food quality, prioritizing protein, stabilizing insulin, and cutting out the junk, fasting becomes a multiplier. Fat loss restarts, belly fat shrinks, energy stabilizes, and the whole process feels sustainable rather than punishing. It's also important to note that these changes don't just show up on the scale. The improvements extend to energy, mood, mental clarity, and overall resilience. Patients often report that their fasting hours feel easier once their diet shifts. They're no longer white-knuckling hunger because their meals are keeping them full and satisfied. This is the difference between someone burning out on fasting after a few weeks versus someone who sticks with it long-term and sees consistent results. Real progress happens when fasting isn't treated as the only lever, but as one piece of a bigger system built on nutrition and hormone balance. Once that's in place, the plateaus break, the frustration disappears, and fat loss feels like it's finally working with the body instead of against it. The biggest breakthrough I've seen with patients who finally make fasting work for them long term isn't about fasting harder, longer, or with more willpower. It comes down to combining fasting with the right food strategy. That's the adjustment that changes everything. On its own, fasting can deliver some early results, but for most people, the weight loss stalls, hunger creeps in, and the process feels unsustainable. But when you pair fasting with nutrient-dense, animal-based foods, suddenly fasting stops feeling like a struggle and starts working the way it's supposed to. Steady fat loss, stable energy, and no constant battle with cravings. Here's why. Fasting works by lowering insulin and encouraging the body to tap into fat stores. But if you break your fast with the wrong foods, refined carbs, sugar, processed snacks, seed oils, you undo that progress almost immediately. Insulin spikes, fat storage ramps up, and you're back to square one. The cycle repeats over and over, fasting during the day, binging on the wrong foods at night, and wondering why the scale won't move. The key adjustment is simple: break your fast with foods that keep insulin stable and promote satiety. That means animal protein and healthy fats. When someone breaks their fast with steak, eggs, or fatty fish, a completely different hormonal response takes place compared to oatmeal, bread, or pasta. Protein signals the body to preserve muscle mass, which is critical for long-term fat loss. Fat provides sustained energy without the blood sugar crash. Together, they create satiety, meaning you naturally eat less without feeling deprived. Instead of fighting hunger, you're aligning with your physiology. This is what makes fasting sustainable. You don't feel like you're forcing it. You feel like it fits. Another reason this combination works is consistency. Anyone can push through a few days of extreme fasting or severe calorie restriction, but very few people can maintain that for months or years. When fasting is paired with nutrient-dense meals, it becomes a lifestyle instead of a temporary fix. You're not thinking about food all day. You're not worried about your next snack, and you're not crashing in the middle of the afternoon. You fast, you eat, you feel good, and you repeat. That consistency is what drives long-term results, not short-term intensity. Patients who make this shift almost always report the same thing: fasting suddenly feels easy. They're not waking up dreading the hours ahead. They're not breaking down and overeating later. And they're not stuck in the cycle of cravings. Their energy levels are stable, their workouts feel better, and their sleep improves. This is because nutrient-dense animal foods not only stabilize insulin, but also provide the micronutrients the body needs to function well. When your body is nourished, fasting becomes natural instead of forced. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require complicated tracking, calorie counting, or obsessing over every bite. You don't need to weigh food or log it into an app. The simplicity of fasting plus high quality nutrition is what makes it sustainable. It works in real life for real people without turning eating into a math project. And it works across the board, whether the goal is fat loss, reducing belly fat, improving blood sugar, or just feeling better day to day. This is also why patients who struggled for years with diets finally succeed with this method. They're no longer relying on willpower alone. They've created an environment where the body naturally gravitates toward fat loss. Fasting provides the framework, but the food strategy provides the fuel. Together, they unlock the full potential of both. Long-term fat loss isn't about the most extreme fasting window or the strictest diet. It's about finding the system you can repeat effortlessly. Fasting paired with the right nutrition is that system. It's simple, it's powerful, and it's sustainable. That's the adjustment that takes fasting from frustrating to effective, not just for a few weeks, but for the long haul.